Welcome back, and today we're going to be tearing right back into this Willy cab cheat code build. So it's only been a day since I've completed this, but there was a little snafu with the overdrive, and in testing it, if you've watched the build video, it takes 14 turns for the front wheel to come back around and realign with the back wheel. And I've put in 33% overdrive before, and I even commented in the video and redid it thinking I miscounted. I feel like I missed the count there. No way it's 14 rotations to get back to normal. But something just didn't feel right. But it was one of those things that I just put the motor back in and fixed it, and I was itching to get to the tabletop testing. So I just kind of recounted, disregarded it and moved on. But luckily, thanks to a viewer in the comments, they kind of said, hey, you probably should go recheck that overdrive. It looks like you only have a 7.5%. And so I said, yeah, you know what? I actually got 2 of those overdrives together in a package. So I ordered them from Maz, and he just threw them all in one Ziploc. So my guess is I took the 212 marked gear and mismatched it with the wrong worm gear. That's all I can assume, because no one makes a 7.5% overdrive. And I put stock gearing in the rear axle, so there is no underdrive to affect anything. So this is going to be somewhat of an addendum to the build. So I'm going to tear this front axle apart, and I'm going to swap in a new worm gear here, the other one that came with this set, and then we're going to retest this and see if we get the typical 33% overdrive that we should have in that front axle. All right, I've got this axle pulled and a little bit of discovery here. So I initially pulled the back diff and just swapped the worm gear, and I looked at both worm gears and they were pretty much the same. So I swapped it in there, and I was about to put it on the truck, and I got to thinking, let me go look at my Maz order. So I'd ordered a 212 and a 213. So you can see the non-greased gear that I did not install is a 212. So I accidentally installed the 213 in the build. So I must have put that in there with the 212 worm gear. So you can see I pulled out that one that I'd swapped in and greased up, ready to go. So I'm going to put back the original worm gear, which is the 212, and I'm going to swap over to the correct 212 gearing. So that will be the correct 33% setup rather than that odd 7.5%. But apparently the 23% worm gear cut is close enough to the 33% worm gear cut that you really can't tell a difference as far as, the smoothness. They mesh up and they turn fine. So that may have been the deal. All of those worm gears should be cut different to match the actual overdrive or underdrive gear. So anyways, just something to look out for if you order multiple sets. The Injora worm gears are nice because they're actually labeled on the stems, but these Maz are not, so you don't know the worm gear setup really. So kind of keep them paired up if you order them, and just something to know. So anyways, I'm going to get this axle put back together, hung on the truck. We'll get the cab on there and we'll do a little overdrive test and see if we've got the correct 33%, which should be about 4 turns, I believe, to bring it back to normal. All right, we are back together again. Power's on, tires are taped, so let's see what effect that had. So before it was 14 turns on that front tire to get back even with the rear. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it looks like maybe 7. It looks like 7 is the magic number there, so we are back to even, but that's still, to me, I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and check some of my prior builds. I know I've got 33% in something, so I think I'm gonna verify and double check this. All right, I found myself a 30% overdrive vehicle, so we're gonna give this guy a little comparison test here, see if I'm crazy. But I was thinking it was 4 rotations here. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, And here we are, that's 4. Let's see, when that's fully locked out at the front, they're even. So let me back them up a little. Yeah, so straight up and down. So it looks like 4 on this one. So I'm gonna have to investigate a little bit further on this Willy build. Take 3. So I've got the original gears that were in the build that gave me the 14 turns on the front wheel. Those are both out now. So I've now swapped in a new worm gear, and we have the labeled 212 gear in there. So let's see what that is actually going to do with this third option set. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like 7 again. So that is super strange. Definitely not the 4 turns it should be. So if 14 turns was 7.5, then I believe this 7 is around a 14% overdrive. So the last option here would be to put back in this 213 labeled gear, and I'm going to leave in the worm gear that is in there now. So we're going to see if that'll actually give us a true 23% overdrive, which should be, I want to say 5.25, 5.5 turns on the front wheel. So I've got a little more teardown to do, swap that in and see if that gives us something wacky. I do have a labeled Endura brand new 213, both gears are labeled correctly, so I know that's right. So that's a fail safe to get a correct overdrive. But anyways, we'll come back and see. Take 4. So everybody place your bets, but my guess is since each worm gear made no difference on the 212 stamped gear, I'm thinking it's going to be the same with this 213. So that means we'd be back to 14 turns on that front wheel. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Look at that. So that's weird, getting the same results no matter which worm gear is paired with each stamped gear. So that was very odd. I could investigate the rear axle, swap in a known OEM gear. I want to say I pulled these gears from just some bags I had, and I had written on there stock or OEM. So there could be an issue back there with a mixed up gear, but man, I really want to figure this out. It's driving me nuts, so bear with me. Okay, I may have a solution here. So I went back to my build video and I looked at the exploded diagram photos of the axle assemblies and zoomed in and counted the teeth on the gear. And sure enough, the gears in this rear axle, the main gear is a 14 tooth. So this is a 16. It is labeled, the worm gear is labeled, so I'm going to go ahead and use this one. So this is stock gearing, so that's going to get swapped into the rear. So that makes sense. So that's why you do the troubleshooting. So both of the setups in the front were reacting the same no matter what. So that made me look to the rear as probably the culprit here. So we'll get the rear to stock gearing, and then that should have a big effect on what the front does in comparison. So anyways, headway. Okay, take 5. We've now got the correct 16T stock gearing in the rear diff, which by the way is where I should have started. So we're going to see if that normalizes this front overdrive ratio. So there's still a 13T, which should be 23% in the front axle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.25. That's perfect, 5.5. That looks like exactly what it should be for a 23% overdrive. So looks like that was the issue all along, was having the incorrect 14T gear in the back, which overdrove the rear, which lessened the overdrive in the front. So my theory is I put in the wrong gear right off the bat. I know I did. And I also put in a 23% overdrive in the front. And looking back at the photos, Maz did not put them together. They were separately ziplocked. So I think I just put the fully incorrect set in the front axle. So I'm going to swap back for the last time the front axle, get the 33% in there. We'll do one more test, see if we get that 4 turn, and that should be the end of this. Take 6. We are reinstalled with the 212 gear in the front. So that ought to be 33% now with the rear corrected. So this should be 4 turns on that front tire to bring us back to even with the rear. So 1, 2, 3. Let's slow this down. Looks like it's going to be exactly 4. So that did it. So it looks like that was all a mix-up on my part, getting the wrong gears in the rear, actually getting the wrong gears in the front as well. But it looks like this is all sorted now, so that is good news. All right, so what did we learn here today? When you take off gears, keep them together, clearly label them in a baggie, keep them organized. Pay attention when you're installing. Make sure and zoom in and read that little stamp on the gear, or count the actual teeth and double check before you get them installed. That'll save you a lot of trouble, as you saw. So I am very happy to get this thing how it should have been to begin with, and I think now I can actually get it out and do a little driving with it. But another big shout out to the viewer that made the comment that kind of spurred me to go ahead and get this worked out. But sure glad that I am, and glad that people are actually paying attention and watching the videos. And as you saw, the videos came in very handy for me to actually go back and reference my own build. So you know, I probably end up going back and watching these as much as you guys, just to go back and remind myself what I actually did on each build. But anyways, that's going to wrap this one up. And looks like from the voting poll, the bronze wheels are in the lead by far as the favorites on this guy. So I figured I'd leave them on here for this video. But until next time, I want to say thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.